So I first noticed that I wasn't feeling healthy, I'd say around the spring of 2020. I started just experiencing frequent urination, a little burning with urination. I also was getting a bunch of yeast infections. And it wasn't anything major. I definitely felt like I could function. But then it was September 2020 when, looking back on it, I believe I had my first IC flare because there was a lot of burning. I still felt like I had to use the bathroom afterwards, and I felt really miserable. And the UTI culture came back negative. I wasn't somebody that suffered from a lot of UTIs. I probably had about 2 in college. It wasn't something, I didn't have recurring UTIs. So this feeling of this frequent urination was really uncomfortable. I went to see a urologist. I was diagnosed with IC in January because I had my first major IC flare. And from there, I was having a lot of discomfort. So I was just having serious inflammation. It was so uncomfortable. It just felt like this constant burning in my bladder, constant pressure on my bladder. I didn't even find urinating that uncomfortable. I just found like I was constantly uncomfortable because my bladder just felt so inflamed. And like I just couldn't, it wouldn't go away. And sometimes it would be worse than other times. Sometimes I felt like I was in a major flare, and other times there was this chronic underlying inflammation in my bladder. So that was definitely the worst part for me. And I would have some spasms too, just with like some sharp pains in my bladder. So, I mean, at first I just went to my primary care physician. She said to go to the gynecologist. The gynecologist referred me to a urologist. The urologist put me on Nirbitreg because at the time she had just diagnosed me with an overactive bladder, because at that point I wasn't having like IC flares per se. And Nirbitreg was not helpful. It definitely just made things worse because it caused serious constipation. And then when I was diagnosed with IC, of course, the urologist gave me the IC diet, which was super unhelpful. It includes so many things that would have been terrible for me. But then the problem is I came to the conclusion that I had a leaky gut because I took a lot of antibiotics in college. I had recurring strep throat. So I was on antibiotics a lot. So I was trying to heal my gut. And in the process, I actually ended up eating a ton of foods high in oxalate, which I'm sure I'll talk about later. And they were just like a lot of nuts, some spinach, some sweet potatoes, just eating foods that I thought were clean, things that you're told are technically good for you and good for digestion. But in reality, they were actually really bad for me. And I had seen a naturopath who was helpful because she listened to me. It was the first time I really felt like I was being listened to, but I don't think she was steering me in the right direction because I don't think she was even really aware of what the problem was. She was just kind of focusing on symptom management, which wasn't helping at all. I do think my root cause was oxalate. Dr. Mandy has really helped me to understand what that is and why my body might not be able to break down oxalate, especially all of that antibiotic use. I probably took antibiotics like 12 times in the span of 5 years. I wasn't on a long-term antibiotic, but I was taking them regularly, at least a couple times a semester in college from strep. And I just think that really caused some damage. I think I had a lot of mineral imbalances, which is something I'm still working on. I think that's a root cause, and some mast cell activation as a result of the oxalate. So, but definitely oxalate, and getting rid of oxalate in my diet has been very helpful. I think so. Through coaching with Dr. Mandy, I just learned a lot about my specific needs and nutritional needs because I feel like we're given these ideas from certain like my naturopath said, follow this. And it was the same things that I had read online, like what's good for your gut health, things like that. But in reality, a lot of those foods were genuinely hurting me and making the situation way worse and aggravating my bladder and aggravating my IC. So Dr. Mandy really just helped me understand what oxalates are. And I remember when my first meetings with her, she told me about oxalates, and it did feel like an aha moment, because the symptoms she was describing were very similar to what I was experiencing. I was eating foods extremely high in oxalate. I was eating nuts all the time. Like every day I was eating nuts, thinking it was good for me. So I think just having the opportunity to understand that and understand my metabolism, my mineral imbalances, and how all of these things are contributing to the problems I was experiencing, which is something I just never would have been able to come to on my own. And it was very helpful. I definitely had a bunch of aha moments during my time with IC Healer. So my symptoms have really improved. I honestly think I've made some really great progress removing oxalates from my diet. I've tried to remove it slowly. I probably went a little faster than I should have, but that was due to my own stubbornness, I'd say. But I feel so much better. Some days I feel like my old self again, and it's so great. And I've only been with IC Healer for, I think, 3 or 4 months now. So the fact that I'm experiencing such better bladder health is amazing. I definitely have less frequency, less pressure in my bladder. I definitely have less inflammation. There are days where I'm still experiencing some inflammation, but that's more due to some symptoms of getting rid of oxalates in my diet. But yeah, definitely less urgency, frequency. I'm just more comfortable. I can just sit and watch a movie, or I can go on a car ride and not think, oh, where's the bathroom? When am I going to be able to use the bathroom next? Or just, I spent so many months just in so much discomfort, just sitting down, just laying down, just being at work, being in class. I'm a grad student. I was uncomfortable, and it was a horrible feeling. It was terrible. I couldn't take it anymore. I was just so uncomfortable all the time. And I don't feel that way nearly as much anymore. I'd say way, way less. There's days where I almost feel like completely symptom free, maybe a little discomfort here or there. And I really do see myself getting to a point in the future where I can be symptom free. So many things I avoided for the last couple of years, dealing with frequent urination, and just the thought of not having to deal with that anymore is so great. I fully recommend working with Dr. Mandy. I never would have come to any of this on my own. She really knows what she's talking about, and she's had so much training. She's very trustworthy. I'm a very skeptical person, and my family is too. My dad is, and no, like right after my first meeting with Dr. Mandy, I knew this is the way I wanted to go with my healing journey, because it has been so helpful. It's honestly almost scary to think about where I would be right now if I hadn't started working with Dr. Mandy. I would have still been eating foods and that were hurting me, and that were actually aggravating my condition. So I really recommend it, especially for any young women out there. I'm only 23. I just remember being so upset about dealing with this at such a young age and feeling like the rest of my life I was going to be suffering. And I can promise that won't be the case to the extent that I was afraid it would be. I feel so much better just in a matter of months, and I highly recommend it. Your health is everything. And that's why it's the most important thing to invest your time and money and energy into is your health, because at the end of the day, it really is everything.